To you redditors aged 50 plus, what's something you genuinely believe young people haven't realized yet, but could enrich their lives or positively impact their outlook on life? Marriage/relationships should be fun and happy. Life is hard, things get tough. Find someone that makes the tough times easier, not harder. Not everything that you disagree with deserves an argument. Pick your battles and let trivial things slide. Take a genuine interest in what other people have to say, ask them follow-up questions about their passions in life. Don't just talk about yourself, or wait for your turn to talk. That's how you have a conversation, and build a relationship. If you die, your employer will have your job posted before you are buried. Remember that on when making work/life choices. Unless you don't mind hearing like all the time day and night, use hearing protection in loud situations. Tinnitus is a bitch. Everybody fucks up, it's what you do after that matters. Wear sunscreen. Every skill takes determined practice to master. I see my young friends/relatives try, and give up on so many things because they weren't very good at it. If you keep doing that, you'll never be very good at anything. 1. It's usually not about you. 2. Sleep is incredibly important. 3. The most important conversations you have will be with yourself. Monitor your self-talk and speak positively, kindly, and respectfully to yourself. 4. Sleep is incredibly important. Debt can really ruin your life. If you want to take on a lot of it, make sure you have a good plan and run it by a lot of smart people first. I'd say invest in your health by regularly exercising. My wife got me into running when we were in our 20s, and it has been a big part of our lives ever since. I'm 63. Nothing crazy, no marathons, we don't time ourselves or follow a strict training plan, we just pick a route, go at our own pace and have fun. We still go 3 to 4 miles, 3-4x per week. I also started working out at the gym 3x a week with free weights in my 30s, and have been doing it ever since. I'm no Schwarzenegger, believe me, but I can still work around the house, move furniture, shovel snow, and have fun tossing a ball around with the kids without injuring or exhausting myself. Between aerobic fitness and the weights, I've been able to stay remarkably healthy my entire adult life, knock on wood. It's also been great for my mental health and managing stress. You don't have to go nuts and set unreasonably strict requirements for exercise goals or diet that a normal person can't possibly maintain, just do the best you can, make exercising a few times per week a habit, eat a reasonable diet, avoid fried stuff, eat fruit and veggies, lay off the sweets, and 40 years later you'll really thank yourself, believe me. Take care of your body. Exercise, keep your weight reasonable, and keep the bad habits in moderation. It really does make a difference later in life. Fear of the future makes you ignore the present, causing you to make errors now that you will regret doing in the past. If you pay attention to the right now, mindfulness, basically, you don't make as many errors, hence you regret the past less, and no longer fear the future. Break the cycle. Live your life while you have energy and fewer commitments. And even when things aren't stellar, it is all life experiences and usually a nugget among the shit. Reading for pleasure. People who knew someone who died in a freak accident, what happened? I used to work for a septic company. A guy who drove one of the big septic trucks that sucked out underground septic tanks at people's houses had to get on his hands and knees and reach into the tank because the lid had fallen in. He lost his balance and fell head first in. His shoulders got wedged in the opening and he drowned upside down in human waste. I don't think I've ever heard of a worse way to go. The homeowner found him after about an hour. A family friend bumped his head, walked about 15 feet across his backyard, sat at his picnic table and died. Autopsy showed no head trauma, but he broke his neck when he hit his head. They figured the walk across the yard caused something to shift enough to do fatal damage to his spinal cord. Former co-worker of mine was gored by a bison while on a trail run. Ironically, he often posted on message boards for the park to be aware of wild animals while there, and in one post he said there are too many people with headphones on, or trying to get too close to the bison to take selfies. He was normally very careful apparently. A guy I knew was setting up a rope swing over a lake for his kids and their friends, which he had done many times before. He always would take a practice swing himself before he would let the kids go. His hand slipped off the rope and he fell before he was over the lake. He hit his head on a rock and died in front of the kids. When I was a 13-year-old boy, I witnessed my grandfather die. He was less than 15 feet away from me when he was decapitated by shrapnel from a broken piece of heavy farm equipment. I'm 50 years old and still struggle with that moment in time. PTSD can be a real bitch. Lovely girl, I went to HS with, got a scholarship to a prestigious university, being one of the very few students from my shitty school to make it to college or uni. 2 weeks into term, her roommate found her laying in her bed dead. The heating boiler was faulty and she'd died of carbon monoxide poisoning in her sleep. We'd even thrown a party for her to celebrate her achievement. This was in 1996 and I'm tearing up a bit thinking about this. Rip Sonia. A friend of my dad's was overseeing a repaired braided 3/4 cable being spooled from one drum to another, at very high speed and tension. He had his gloved hand loosely on the wire guiding it into position, a big no-no in the industry. A frayed wire came through, snagged his glove and dragged him into the drum, wrapping him into a contorted paste within seconds. A friend of a friend showed up at his girlfriend's apartment with a head wound. He didn't know how it happened. He also didn't know how he drove over there. She took him to the ER where he ended up passing away. He had his keys, wallet, and phone on him. The only thing we could think of is he might have tripped, fell, and hit his head in the wrong spot. I was snowboarding in 1997 in Switzerland with a good friend. He was skiing. I had caught an edge and landed on the back of my head while also twisting my knee badly. I was being looked over by the mountain rescue and first aid. I told my friend he could keep skiing, I would head back to our villa. I ended up going to sleep at around 6 p.m. as I had a hot shower and some Tylenol 3s after dinner. I woke up to see my friend hadn't returned and thought it was odd, but maybe he hooked up with a lady at some bar. Friend never came back from skiing. He was found deep in a crevasse the next afternoon and frozen to death. My neighbor was cleaning his gutters and fell off his roof because he missed his footing when stepping. Fell right on his head. This was a few years back now, but the family moved quickly after, even though it had been their house for like 30 years. I can't say I blame them. A girl I went to grade school with was crushed under a Smith machine at a local gym. 24-hour gym, so no one was around to help. A friend slipped and fell in the tub. Cracked his head. His roommate found him a half hour later. Died on the way to the hospital. Had an uncle that lived down at the beach, used to spend a lot of time out on a Bertram fishing boat. Many beers were usually enjoyed during those times. They used to go out into deeper water and jump off the flybridge, the roof part of the boat where there are controls as well as a place to sit. One day he went out with some friends and they decided to partake in said jumping. Unbeknownst to him, the tide had gone out and they had drifted into shallow water. He dove in head first, hit the bottom, killed him. A friend of mine was riding his four-wheeler out at an off-road park. He kicked up a tree branch that impaled him in the thigh. He bled to death before anyone even knew it happened. Girl I grew up with was driving home in college and go into a horrible car accident that gave her brain damage and pretty much removed her jaw from her skull. Tons of surgery, and 3 years later, she walked down the aisle at her wedding. She was in her yard a few months after her wedding and slipped/tripped/felt dizzy and fell, they aren't sure, and hit her head on pavement patio, and her husband found her dead. People who had traumatic childhoods, what's something you do as an adult that you hadn't realized was a direct result of the trauma? Serious NSFW. Language is full of tripwires for me. I cannot tolerate vagueness, because it has been used against me so much. Always being apologetic or never being able to make decisions. Getting overly attached to people way too quickly, which usually pushes them away and just destroys me over and over again. Self-doubt. Need for affirmation. Can't take criticism well. I spent most of my life being a good test taker. Now I find it difficult to have patience with myself while I struggle to learn/pick up new things. I realized recently that a lot of the cruel things that were said to me have embedded themselves into my regular vocabulary under the guise of self-deprecating humor. I used to loathe physical touch. After much contemplation, I realized I didn't trust anyone enough to make myself vulnerable, even for a hug. Adrenaline dump at the slightest hint of conflict. Yelling and door slamming still gets me, at 37. Even if I know I didn't do anything wrong, a slammed door, even an accidental one, makes me jump out of my skin. Also, speed reading. My mother helped me to learn to read. Her method was, one wrong word, one slap. I learned to read fast, so I can get away quicker. Overthinking. Predicting and preparing for worst-case scenarios. Having a higher tolerance for situations while also falling apart over tiny things. Refusing to let people stand behind me. Lack of trust for others. Being very prepared for people to drop and leave me without reason or warning. Oh, I forgot to mention, you develop a physical need to help others. You want nothing more than to make others happy, to avoid or overcome ever feeling as you do. No matter what it costs you. And you hope that you can make up for whatever it is you did to deserve it all. Not sure if this is just really weird, but at work whenever I ask for a day off, every job I've had, I had given a detailed description of why and the purpose of needing it off. Finally, at my current job my direct supervisor would keep telling me, I don't need to know why. I did some reflection and realized that, in my youth, if I didn't explain things as far as being absent, feeling sick, needing to go to the doctor, if I didn't have a good enough explanation, I was completely disregarded. It got ingrained in me to find the best possible reasoning behind nearly every choice I ever made. Something I do that I recently learned other people don't do is constantly pay attention to my surroundings. I listen for footsteps, doors opening and closing, people's voices, water running in the pipes, cars pulling into the driveway, on and on. As a kid I needed to know who was in my house and what they were doing. I'm insanely flinchy, like I get startled super easily. People try to jump out and scare me, and they laugh when I jump back. I wish they knew, as it hurts sometimes knowing why it always gets me. Depersonally sing. Dearly sing. Losing bits of me. To this day I still sleep on my stomach. When I failed the 4th grade my dad was beyond pissed at his son being a failure. He told my mom to leave the house and had me drop my pants and take my whipping like a man. He beat me so long and so hard that the belt cut into my flesh and there were chunks that were hanging loose. I literally had to take a pillow to school the next week to sit down on. The teacher was concerned, so she called the principal, vice principal and 2 other teachers as witnesses and had me drop my pants in the boys' restroom. They were horrified but didn't report anything. When I told them why I was beaten, they told me to study harder to stop this from happening again. That was decades ago, but I still sleep on my stomach and never fail at anything I try to do. I keep saying sorry to every little inconveniences or anytime I feel like I'm bothering someone.